Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive.
Hey everyone.
Today, we're plunging headfirst into a really unique set of sources. These are excerpts from a story called J.R. Pseudonym, yet another anime isekai.
Right.
And our mission, basically, is to pull out the interesting bits, the knowledge, the insights from what looks like a very meta, very self-aware fantasy story.
Yeah, it's playing with the tropes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What happens when your life just suddenly flips into this like fantasy adventure you never asked for?
Yeah.
And you know it's a cliche.
Yeah, that's the hook. We've got this really compelling firsthand account here. A protagonist wakes up, completely new body, completely new world.
The classic isekai setup.
Totally classic. But right from the start, it feels different. Unsettling, even if you know the genre. There are these layers of internal conflict, this self-awareness that just challenges everything about identity, about who's controlling the story. So yeah, get ready to question, what's real, what's maybe predetermined, and how someone adapts when the whole script just gets thrown out.
Okay, so let's dive into that. The sudden shift. The first thing that hits you and hits our protagonist is this really unsettling awakening.
Right.
I mean, imagine waking up not just in a weird room, but a different body entirely.
Yeah.
The description is great. Strange wooden ceiling, this like cottagecore room, and then the shock. 2 weights rested on my chest.
Uh-huh.
A thick braid of vibrant pink hair down to the waist, wearing a delicate frilly nightdress. It's just immediate, total wrongness.
It's incredibly jarring. And that physical change, it even goes down to the voice, which is fascinating because it's not just, oh, I look different. It's this profound loss of self-expression.
How so?
Well, curse words, gone, replaced automatically with these super sweet terms like honey and frip.
Fripp, yeah.
And their voice is now this high, sweet, lilting thing. It throws you right into that big question, doesn't it? Is your identity tied to your body? Or is it this internal thing, even when that internal thing is stuck in this totally alien shell?
Imagine being like internally cynical, but forced to sound like a Disney princess.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost,
Right.
comically cruel, like you said before.
It makes sense they'd question reality. So the first instinct is, okay, gotta ground myself. They pinched their cheek.
And art.
It hurt. A lot. So not a dream, which leads to this like rapid fire list of rationalizations. Okay. Not in an elaborate dream realm, not kidnapped by the Fae, definitely not an AI science experiment.
Trying to apply old world logic.
Yeah, trying to fit it into any box they understand, and none of them work.
And then this internal struggle gets even more complicated. Almost immediately, we get introduced to Other Mame.
Ah, right. Liliana.
Yeah, Liliana, the original consciousness of the body. And she's described as painfully naive, always seeing the best in everyone.
The complete opposite of our cynical protagonist.
Totally. But the weird thing is this Other Mame Key, she sort of helps, subtly, even helps choose underwear, apparently.
Okay, that's odd.
It highlights this strange budding partnership, maybe. It forces you to think about dual consciousness, not just as a plot point, but as this ongoing internal negotiation. Who am I now?
Right, so after grappling with all of that, our protagonist has to actually deal with this new world. They take their first steps out into Breezewood.
And this is where the story really starts messing with the fantasy tropes.
Yeah, Breezewood sounds, on paper, like the most generic, charming fantasy town ever. Picturesque fountain, market stalls, everyone's super friendly.
It's almost too friendly, too perfect.
Exactly, it's idyllic.
But there's this fascinating, almost creepy explanation for why it's so idyllic. It comes from Soria, her friend, this world soul theory.
Okay, tell me about that.
The idea is that this entity, this world soul, is basically dreaming Breezewood into existence. It's not conscious, not like a god, but its dreaming shapes the town's nature, makes it inherently good.
Whoa, so free will is questionable.
It kind of redefines it, doesn't it? Suggests morality isn't just a choice here, it's built in. Predetermined almost. How much real agency do you have in a world that's literally designed to be good by some sleeping cosmic force?
That's a lot to unpack. So this isn't just a quaint town. It's like fundamentally, maybe unnaturally quaint.
Pretty much. And speaking of Soria...
Liliana's best friend, right? The witch?
Yeah, the enthusiastic witch. She's got this floating, glowing book named Diaboli. It's like her grimoire, but also her companion. Seems to have its own personality.
Okay, cool. Magic item trope.
But here's the kicker. Soria also has her own writer, her own Other Melim.
Wait, really? So the protagonist isn't the only one?
Nope. Not alone in this weird dual consciousness boat. And that completely changes things, right? It suggests this isn't some unique curse. It might be a feature of this world, or at least more common than they thought.
Okay, that's a huge twist. How does that affect things like their first adventure?
Well, their first adventure is classic low-level stuff.
Yeah,
Clear some pixies from a farmer's field, except,
let me guess, they're not cute pixies.
not even close, they're described as more like imps or tiny demons, insect wings, horns, a truly malicious-looking grin.
Uh-huh, okay. So, subverting expectations right away.
Yeah, the story's basically winking at you, saying, thought this was going to be easy mode? Nope.
And after that charming encounter, our protagonist has this breakdown almost, a
Yeah.
real moment of resistance.
Oh, yeah. They just declare, I don't want to level up, I don't want to have an adventure, I don't want to be Pinky, the useless love interest.
Wow, that's very meta.
It really is. It's not just complaining, it's actively fighting against the role they feel pushed into, resisting the narrative itself.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And does this resistance do anything?
It seems to. This leads to another really interesting thing. The protagonist starts developing this ability to subtly influence events, like bend the rules a bit.
How does that work?
They find they can stop other characters from saying things that would push the story forward on its expected path. And when they do this, the world itself feels tense. It breaks slightly.
Like reality glitches?
Kind of like when they try to ask for directions without giving the usual quest-like details, the world feels wrong until they add the details back in. It's as if the world expects the tropes and our protagonist is learning to exploit the seams.
Fascinating. Okay, so they're starting to push back, but then things escalate.
Right.
The Empire gets involved.
Right. Enter the shadow of the Empire. We meet this guild proctor, Kine. He's described as suave, but unsettling.
Oh.
He shows this specific interest in Liliana and also talks about the Imperial Academy, which Soria immediately flags as clearly the villains.
Good intuition, maybe.
Seems like it. The protagonist definitely reads Kine's offer for Liliana to join the Academy as basically a threat in disguise. The external pressure is ramping up.
And that pressure leads to...
It culminates really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Kine just kidnaps Soria
Yep.
abruptly, cruelly, uses an airship and just takes her.
Wow, okay. No messing around.
No. And this leaves the protagonist completely alone, furious, filled with this deep pit of anger. This is the moment, the catalyst. It forces their hand. No more passive resistance.
They have to act.
Exactly. It's the classic call to action, but for someone who desperately doesn't want the call.
So, fueled by anger, wanting to rescue Soria, what do?
They run into Ishan. He's an Imperial ensign, was with Kian during the kidnapping. Described as cute, much to the protagonist's internal embarrassment.
Awkward.
Very awkward, especially with the body reacting in ways they don't control, like blushing. But necessity wins out. The protagonist basically strong-arms Ishan into helping them, forces an alliance.
Pragmatic, if uncomfortable.
Totally. And this is where the protagonist starts using their unique knowledge more actively.
Their knowledge from our world.
Yeah. They explain the concept of stories to Ishan, how narratives follow well-known patterns. They're basically using literary theory, meta-knowledge, as a tool, trying to figure out how to change the ending of this Isekai plot they're stuck in.
Using their understanding of stories as, like, a strategic weapon.
Pretty much. Which is a really cool idea,
So where does this reluctant alliance take them first?
unfortunately. The sewers.
Oh, lovely. Classic RPG sewer level.
You know it. Complete with oozing slimes that inflict poison like a damage over time thing, and these giant bugs puppeting dead flesh. Although, thankfully, it's later clarified the bugs are just big bugs, not actually controlling corpses. Still gross, though.
Definitely. Any useful skills emerge down there?
Actually, yes. The protagonist discovers they have a spiritus skill. Turns out is vital for healing status effects, like curing that poison. An unexpected power, but one they learn to use pretty quickly out of necessity.
Good thing, too. So they survive the sewers. Where does Ishan lead them?
To the Imperial prison. And inside, they find Soria, but she's not alone in her page.
Oh, more characters.
Yep. Two new, very unexpected allies. Darshana, who's this spunky air pirate captain,
Air pirate. Okay.
and Daniel, her first mate, described as quiet, but a skilled brawler. So the party is growing, but it's a very unconventional crew.
A cynical protagonist forced into a heroine's body, a reluctant Imperial soldier, a witch with her own rider, and now air pirates. This is quite the team.
It definitely is. And they immediately have to put those skills to the test. They have to fight their way out of the prison.
So a big battle scene.
Yeah, pretty chaotic. They're up against Lieutenant Isha and other Imperial troopers. Suria's using her magic, Diaboli's helping out, Daniel's doing his brawling thing. But it's messy.
Not a clean win.
Far from it. There are real consequences. A trooper actually dies from poison during the fight,
Oh, yeah.
and this hits the protagonist hard. A real feeling of failure, a reminder that even if this feels like a game or story sometimes, the stakes are real. People can die.
That's a sobering moment. Even when you're trying to break the script, actions have weight.
Exactly. So the escape itself gets pretty dramatic after that. Darshana, the air pirate captain,
Right, she has an airship.
she uses some special charge ability of her ship, the Lamonia, to basically blast their way out.
Does it work?
Kind of. It gets them out, but it also causes the airship to crash in a blizzard.
Oh, great. Out of the frying pan.
Into the snowy freezer.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a chaotic, desperate escape, not some heroic, clean getaway. Highlights how messy their resistance is.
So stranded in a blizzard after a crash, where do they go from there?
Well, following the wreckage, they stumble upon something else. Imperial dig site #28, and there they find Idith. She's a Monani engineer. The protagonist internally calls her a dwarf, but apparently gets corrected. Monani seems to be the correct term here.
Ah, okay. And she's an engineer.
Yes, part of this technologically advanced sort of subterranean race, and crucially, she knows about ancient technomagic.
Technomagic. Okay, so blending sci-fi and fantasy elements now.
Seems like it. This opens up whole new possibilities beyond just swords and standard magic.
And what happens at the dig site?
Something pretty major. There's this massive door covered in ancient runes. The protagonist touches them, drains all their mana instantly, but the gate flares up with brilliant gold and white light, revealing what looks like a techno-magic wonderland inside.
Wow. So they unlocked something ancient.
Seems that way. And this act also introduces another voice in the protagonist's head, someone called Tower, like another internal guide or friend.
Okay, so now there's the protagonist, other May, Liliana, and Tower. Let's get crowded in there.
It really is. It suggests this connection to the world, maybe its ancient powers, is getting deeper, more complex, as if the world itself is responding to their attempts to rewrite the story.
So they've found this engineer, Edith, and unlocked this ancient place. What's the plan now?
Well, Edith's expertise is key. With Darshana's help, they start repairing these ancient golems that were found at the dig site.
Golems, like magical robots.
Essentially, yeah. Ancient technomagic constructs. And this leads to the protagonist proposing a bold new strategy.
Okay.
Instead of just trying to survive or sneak around, they decide to use these reactivated golems to actively clear a path. Turn this dungeon, this dig site, into basically a scavenging operation and use the golems for a strategic assault.
Ah, so they're shifting from just resisting a narrative to actively directing it, using the tools they find to make their own path.
Exactly. This is the protagonist really stepping up, embracing their agency, applying that meta-knowledge, that understanding of stories and patterns, but using it to lead, to orchestrate events, not just react.
That's quite the transformation. What an incredible journey, really, from being this, reluctant heroine forced into a role to someone actively trying to rewrite their own destiny.
It really is. That initial resistance to what they saw as this Isekai prison world, it morphs into this fierce drive. Saving her friend, yes, but also challenging the very rules of this reality.
It's a fascinating look at how identity gets forged in these weird, adverse situations, and how having that meta-awareness, knowing the tropes, combined with being adaptable, well, it can let you turn a pre-scripted narrative totally on its head.
Absolutely. And the blend is what's so compelling, isn't it? The protagonist's cynical stories knowledge mixing with Liliana's, naive optimism maybe still influencing things, plus the world's own strange mechanics.
Yeah.
It makes for a really cool exploration of agency. How much control can you really seize?
Yeah, in a reality, that seemed designed to give you none at first. So, maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. If you suddenly found yourself dropped into a new, fantastical world, and you knew the rules, the tropes, what would you do? Would you try to play along? Fulfill the expected plot?
Or would you try to break it? Bravely, maybe even, ridiculously. Try to bend that reality to your own will, even if it seems impossible.
Something to think about.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into something, well, really quite remarkable. It's from a novel called Yet Another Anime Isekai 2.pdf. And don't let that title fool you. This isn't just your typical fantasy story, not at all. It's actually a deep dive into a narrative that's incredibly self-aware. It gives you this unique look into a world that's, both high fantasy and strangely familiar in some ways.
Exactly. Yeah, our mission today is really to unpack things. The characters, the world's mechanics, and crucially, that underlying meta-narrative. It's what really elevates this story beyond just, another adventure.
Hmm.
We're going to explore how its inhabitants sort of navigate what feels like well, a scripted reality,
Yeah.
and the choices they manage to make within that framework. It's a fascinating look at destiny versus personal agency. Really is.
Okay, so let's kick things off with our heroine, Liliana. Pink-haired healer girl. But her origin is pretty striking. She was apparently dead and then plucked from the well of eternity into this new place. That's interesting enough, but the way she sees this world, it's even more unusual, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. Lily operates with this deep meta-awareness. She doesn't just live in this fantasy world. She knows she's in one. You see her constantly referencing story beats, JRPGs, tropes. It's like she's read the manual beforehand. And she has this internal voice, too, her other earm that guides her, warns her, almost like a built-in narrator.
Right, the other. And her abilities. They're not just spells, are they? Things like bonds of friendship or even
Wow.
cooking?
No, they definitely hint at something deeper. Bonds of friendship, strengthening allies, sure, but cooking. It literally helps motivate Captain Ramon's undead crew on that ghost ship by reminding them of life. It shows how connection, even simple comforts, can be powerful. But the really big ones are her system keys. There's Gate, which is a dragon for teleportation. Then Forge, described as the actual crafter and maker of the system itself, which is huge.
The crafter of the system, wow.
Yeah. And Tower, an impenetrable shield. But using it costs her life force, which is a serious drawback.
So, Forge. The idea that someone made this world system. Does the story dig into that? Like, is this just a game to some creator? What does that imply about free will for people like Lily?
It raises these huge philosophical questions right within the story. These system keys aren't just magic powers. They're like access points to the world's code. It really blurs the line between magic and maybe programming. It forces you and Lily to think about free will in a constructed reality. And you see Lily herself struggling. She has this inherent soft-heartedness in a really violent world. She's also called a child of ether, suggesting some kind of deep, maybe destined connection to the world's magic. She might be technically 17, but she's got all this knowledge and experience from somewhere else. Makes her way more capable, but also burdened.
Yeah, definitely burdened. So she's not alone, right? Who's in her crew?
Right, it's quite an eclectic group.
Let's start with Soria. Cheerful, mischievous, has a witchy, wondrous treehouse of terror. Sounds fun. And she seems clued into the story threads as well.
She does. And she carries this item diably, which seems significant. Maybe it connects her to the wilder parts of the narrative. You also see the surprising feral light in her eyes when things get serious, especially in combat. There's more to her than just cheerfulness.
Okay. And then there's Ishan.
Ishan, yeah. He's a former Imperial trooper, super loyal, very protective of Lily. He's always the one worrying about pulling our blows properly, trying not to cause too much harm, even to enemies. He's also the strategist, practical thinker, and described as an engineer of sorts, which in this world is kind of like being an archaeologist, digging up old tech.
Interesting. And Darshana, Daniel calls her the smartest person I know.
That's right. She's a marvelous mechanic, apparently working on her thesis, building things in an old barn. Turns out she's got great common sense and is really good with navigation, too, which is vital for them.
And Daniel himself. You mentioned Lakshmi calls his insights philosophical bullshit.
Yes. He's generally stoic, insightful, a calm voice, but maybe sometimes a bit too philosophical for the situation, according to Lakshmi. Still, that calmness is probably a good anchor for the group.
Okay, so let's track their journey a bit. It starts on a ghost ship, the Lemoniad. And Lily's cooking ability is key there, motivating undead pirates by reminding them of food. That's unexpected.
It really is. It's a great example of how mundane things become powerful in this context.
But even then, you see Lily struggling with the violence, right? Even though she's good in a fight.
Absolutely. That tension is always there, and it ramps up when they get to a port city. They're trying to sell this glowing cutlass. We won in a duel, or as the text says, technically won.
Right. So ethical gray areas immediately. How do you operate when the rules seem different?
Exactly. And then they run into street thugs. Lily's just like, seriously, we just fought ghost pirates.
Yeah, the audacity.
But Ishan's immediately worried about bystanders, collateral damage. That contrast again between Lily's perspective and Ishan's training.
So where do they go from there? Things seem dicey.
Dicey is right. They go to the Adventurers Guild only to find a wanted poster for Lily.
Oh, wow. So now they're all criminals.
Pretty much all wanted criminals, the text says. And it's not just the law. The church is after her, too.
The church? What do they want?
They want her as a saintess, or maybe this figure called Vicar Achanin. Soria immediately gets bad vibes, suspects some bad people in it are pulling strings.
Okay, so this is way bigger than just adventuring now. Politics, religion.
Definitely. And it leads them down another path. They meet a shady contact named Alan, who gets them involved in infiltrating a nobleman's mansion. Lily is really uncomfortable with all the political intrigues. You can feel her reluctance.
But Ishan's probably in his element, mapping escape routes.
Exactly. Trooper instincts kick in.
Yeah.
It really highlights that even with her meta-knowledge, Lily is still, at heart, a 17-year-old girl from a backwater village. Seeing Magitech steamboats and airships for the first time. It's overwhelming, even if she conceptually understands them. Her reactions are very human.
And things go wrong in the mansion, right? Lily gets captured.
They do. It leads to this big rescue scene. Soria sets off explosions. Switching for Lily really shows his loyalty.
Then later, they're at a bathhouse with some new companions, Devdan and Priya.
Yes, and Priya has this moment where she admits to Lily, "You're really nothing like I imagined it." It's a dose of reality about the harshness of adventuring life. The script isn't always glamorous.
Brutal. And it gets worse, doesn't it? Commander Keen.
Oh, Keen is bad news. They encounter him on an airship. He tells Lily her village was wiped from the map. Just devastating.
And his interrogation tactic. That's chilling.
It really is. Not torturing the target, but threatening the people precious to them.
Mm.
Lily's friends, or this pirate rebellion he thinks she's connected to, it puts Lily in an impossible position. And interestingly, despite her own power, she actually considers just waiting for Ishan to rescue her. That bond is strong.
Then there's a battle. She uses Forge and Tower.
Yeah, a major confrontation. She uses Forge, taps into that system-level power, and she uses Tower, the shield, even though it physically injures her. And she really grapples with the ethics of killing in that moment. There's this raw line where she asks something like, how did you deal with a world that wanted to end you? It's intense, morally intense, not just physically.
Wow. So after all that, she's released by the church.
Yes, a church delegation arrives looking for their saintess and basically takes custody of her from kin. And the first thing Lily does, uses her mana to heal herself up and clean herself.
Huh. It's such a small detail, but so telling. Even after cosmic battles and political intrigue, sometimes you just want to be clean. Basic human comfort.
It really grounds her character, doesn't it? And then they use Gate to teleport back to Breezewood, and you feel Lily's relief, that desire for just an ordinary, simple life.
And we meet her mother there, an alchemist.
Yeah, her mother makes these powerful, home-brewed X potions. Shows how resources aren't just found in dungeons. Sometimes they're made quietly at home. And the group has to be practical now. They need money, so they plan side quests, selling potions.
But they have to avoid the Adventurers Guild, right? Because they're wanted.
Exactly. Smart move. They're making pragmatic choices to survive within this fantastical world.
They even have to go in disguise. Lily's pink hair gets dyed black by Soria. Ishtan gives her a headscarf.
Right. But even disguised, they run into the City Watch.
Oh no, how do they handle that?
Turns out Devdan and Darshana are surprisingly good at navigation and creating distractions. It takes the whole team, using all their different skills, not just fighting.
That's great. So where does this part of the story leave us?
It kind of wraps up this phase with Darshana working hard on her prototype airship. There's this constant sense of time pressure. The shadows are mentioned. The whole church thing is still looming. The narrative just keeps asking that question, you know?
Yeah.
How do these characters, even Lily, who knows about the script, find their own way? How do they assert their agency? It's this constant struggle.
Yeah. So this deep dive, it really wasn't just about the magic or the fights, was it? It's fundamentally about these characters trying to live in a reality that feels, well, pre-written in places. But they keep pushing back, trying to deviate from that script.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? The source uses this phrase, grooves with crumbs.
Grooves with crumbs.
Yeah, suggesting the world has these easy paths, these grooves that are comfortable to follow. But you can climb out, even if it's harder. It makes you wonder, how much of our own lives are like that, following the easy grooves? And how much freedom do we really have or take to choose our own path, even when it's difficult? This story really pushes you to think about that interplay between fate and free will. What really stands out to you when you think about living in a potentially scripted world, but still trying to make your own choices?